Hi, and welcome back. Continuing on a reading of Alice Bailey's book, Esoteric Psychology. We are moving on to question 2, which is, what are the origin, goal, and purpose and plan? What are the origin, goal, purpose, and plan of the soul? This is a quick section. So let's read this, and I hope you're doing well or endeavoring to become so every day, taking it day by day. All right, continuing on. The 7 rays are the sum total of the divine consciousness of the universal mind. They might be regarded as 7 intelligent entities through whom the plan is working out. They embody divine purpose, express the qualities required for the materializing of that purpose, and they create the forms and are the forms through which the divine idea can be carried forward to completion. Symbolically, they may be regarded as constituting the brain of the divine heavenly man. The divine heavenly man. They correspond to the ventricles. I was about to say, I don't know if you could read that. I was thinking about saying, so I was going to correct it to say the divine heavenly man or woman. But then I thought, I don't get hung up on those kinds of things. I think that it's implied. I think that we can understand that back in the day, there was a smaller mindedness, right? I don't think that we have to take every step to emphasize now that, the woman and the divine feminine should be acknowledged and esteemed and recognized. Not to say that she shouldn't, but to say it's not to so much demonize those who don't, take that extra effort to specify and explain away what we mean all the times so as to protect the emotions of the easily offended. On that note, I have a little handy dandy universal astrology guide here. As I go through Cancer season, I think that Cancer, because we're in Cancer season as of June 22nd or 21st, and I would say out of the whole zodiac, Cancer is the sign that I'm probably the least familiar with, or the least comfortable with as well, because I have a lot of earth in my chart, and so I don't necessarily vibe too much with the energy of the emotions and being very emotional. Although I have emotions, I really understand air energy, the logical, the thinking, and the speaking, and the kind of not go with the flow, because that still has an aspect of the water element that I need to learn and embody, but more like the being able to detach from something and be like, c'est la vie, that air sign energy. And then the fire energy, I also have that in my rising. So I have a lot of comfort with that, taking action, being assertive, going for what you want, that drive and that passion, and understanding where that fuel comes from. It comes from our inspiration, our inner centers. That's part of our intuition. When we learn the intuition, which is the waters, and the quell the emotions and learn the positive aspect of the water signs is the intuitive nature, the spiritual nature, and then to trust that and then act from it in a healthy way. I do have that kind of down, but I need to learn more about the positive side of Cancer. And to circle back to the point of why I started this, I was just reading this little guide, and they have these at local spiritual shops. If you just search for a spiritual shop, like there used to be a store with crystals and candles and incense and little handy dandy guides like this and reference material. But anyways, it says it breaks down the positive traits and the negative traits of each sign. And as I go through the Living Monad series, I'm trying to embody that sign, right? So that I can be in harmony with the energy and then manifest from that place. And so I want to avoid the negative traits of that sign, because the energy is going to be conducive to us leaning into that if we're unaware. So then we're trying to learn the aspects of the zodiac so that we can embody all of them in their purest, wholest sense, and then become the monad. So that kind of just be impelled forward based on that energy that we are consciously trying to activate and learn about. So the Cancer positive traits are listed here as reserved, emotional, sympathetic, security conscious, prudent, retentive, domestic, maternal, protective, creative, calm, imaginative, and conscientious. So this is always summarized kind of like the mother energy, the vibe of being nurturing. And to be a Cancer and have that energy doesn't mean that you have to be a woman, feminine. Just like back to the point is it's not about like not orientation, your gender or your all of that stuff, but orientation falls into it too, because that's become this whole thing, this whole buzz topic. Like we have to specify all of these things, but if you get down to the nitty gritty of it, that's about your sexual preferences, and that's not necessarily something that we need to. It's not the initial topic of discussion when we go out into the day. So why do we kind of have to focus so heavily on in our society? That could be a private thing. And so for me, if I read it say masculine pronouns, I'm not offended by that, because when it goes into the negative traits of Cancer sign, it can be introverted, moody, sulky, devious, inclined to self-pity, ruled by feelings and urges, can easily become depressed and over-emotional, and very easily hurt. So that's something that's kind of like a slippery slope, a trick of the energy right now. Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so whenever the moon changes, we are all affected by that. Our feminine energy, which is the emotional side, the receptive side, is always swayed by that based on our level of consciousness and awareness of the change of the moon and what sign it's in. So when it's in Cancer, when it's happy, it can really make you be very emotionally, very easily swayed. And if you're not conscious, you'll be like, everything hurts your feelings. The crab has a tough outer shell, but inside, it's very soft. And so just watch out for that sensitivity, that oversensitivity. Try to understand the person's intention and then react from a less emotional place, and then harness instead the more positive traits. And it's interesting too that, emotional is listed as a positive trait. It's not bad to have emotions. That's why I have to learn, because being so earthy, we tend to be very, very private in our emotions. We tend to not just, I don't let myself cry. I know my mom even has said, and she's heavy water. So I learned from my mother to grow into this aspect. Usually the parents will have the opposite, or something funny going on in their chart, something that you need to learn and grow into. But anyways, learning how to not bottle up emotions until you have like an explosion. That's what they say about earth signs, is you kind of just keep it to yourself, keep trucking along, and then kind of fall apart in private, and then pick yourself back up and then go back out. And they're what I've learned about the water signs, again, studying with my mom, is they'll just like always just be talking about their feelings, always just wanting to share, always just feelings, just feelings. And then, but it's just a balance, right? We want to be emotional. We want to acknowledge that emotions are the fuel for, Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill, he talked about it's not just enough to have the idea of what you want into your head. You have to have a burning desire for it, and then you have to apply it, and then you have to will it into being, and then accept that in. So a part of that is understanding emotions so that we can know how to harness our manifestations and bring about what we want instead of what we don't want. Because if you're manifesting and then your emotional set point and you're not aware of your emotions is depression and sensitivity, feelings of spite and, like she says, deviousness and being self-pitying, that could be actually at the heart of what you're manifesting. So you're really just attracting in more of the same, what your emotional set point is. Jerry and Esther Hicks, Asking is Given, is a great book on working on that. Circling back to the point. So, wow, all that to say, when it says that divine heavenly man is symbolically what constitutes the seven rays, we understand that the divine heavenly man will be the fully integrated monad of embodying the masculine and the feminine, all signs of the zodiac, all traits of the monad, to become the one. So we are not offended by that phrasing. Continuing on. They correspond to the ventricles of the brain, to the 7 centers within the brain, to the 7 centers of force, and to the 7 major glands which determine the quality of the physical body. They are the conscious executors of divine purpose. Conscious executors, like we are when we become the monad, we are the conscious executors of knowingly integrating all that is available to us, even with the 7 rays. When I learn about all of these systems that have different aspects and they tell us about our individual personality types, the Enneagram, or the, what is the other one? Myers-Briggs personality types, any of these things where they tell us about different segments of cut off parts that we could be. When we understand unity consciousness is the goal or is the key, that we understand and understand that it's not so much to label ourselves. When we understand ourselves, when we learn about ourselves, Aries, that's learning who we are on our blueprint, our design. But to unlock that and become your higher self, then you would just learn what the other selves are and then integrate that which you have the blind spot of to become the monad again. They are the 7 breaths, animating all forms which have been created by them to carry out the plan. And so the purpose of dividing ourselves was important at one point as like a play, an interplay, because if you are all things, you can't differentiate yourself to work out some plan. It's just one existence, right? It's pretty flat. To have experience then is to create sentience, awareness of sensing and feeling and thinking, and all of these things are so that we could perceive and experience the act of carrying out a plan or a purpose. This is about learning that that purpose, that orchestrated design, is the divine purpose, and we can tap into that by returning to this information, the ancient teachings. So the 7 rays are the 7 breaths. These rays animate all forms which have been created by them. They created the forms. They created us. We created ourselves so that we could carry out this plan of existence, each in our own unique ways, playing our own roles. This falls into religion. It doesn't negate it. It takes it to the next level of consciousness and understanding. It may perhaps be easier to understand the relation of the 7 rays to deity if we remember that man himself, being made in the image of God, is a 7-fold being, capable of 7 states of consciousness, expressive of the 7 principles or basic qualities which enable him to be aware of the 7 planes upon which he is, consciously or unconsciously, functioning. At every moment of the day, we're functioning. We're breathing through our lungs. Our cells are regenerating. They're doing their thing. We're processing and digesting our food. All of these things are going on. We're functioning, and you're doing that unconsciously. And so we have to just think about that in all the other aspects of what we could do in terms of learning who we are and our power, which is basically understanding our astrology or our makeup. That all is happening unconsciously as well if we're not consciously living as that. And when we operate on that unconsciously, it's a little bit different than the system that's made or designed for us to follow or flow with unconsciously, because we don't have that automatic structure and organization like our cells do, and our lungs and our breathing systems and all that. It's kind of chaotic if we don't understand how to operate consciously first on all cylinders, basically learning the monad. Because I think that when we operate on autopilot, we're operating based on our blueprint. Of course, eventually, once you train yourself to be conscious of, say, a practice like this, working through the seasons, embracing that energy and living from that, that's a conscious behavior that then becomes a habit. Through repetition, it becomes automatic, and then it moves into the subconscious where you don't have to think at it. You can just kind of learn how to switch into whichever energy is necessary to achieve the goal, whether that's interacting with another person who you know is a water sign, or interacting with a person who comes from fire, and knowing that when you operate from that unconscious opposing energy, sometimes one will drown out the other and the other one will burn. It's just like you understand how we interact with others, and also the experiences of just the energy of what's influenced by that, like I was talking about with the moon, not being so swept away in our emotions. Um, Sorry about all the talking. I'll just try to get through this last section. Okay. It may perhaps be easier to understand the relation of the seven rays to deity if we remember that man himself, being in the image of God, is a sevenfold being, capable of seven states of consciousness, expressive of the seven principles or basic qualities which enable him to be aware of the seven planes upon which he is, consciously or unconsciously, functioning. He is a septonate at all times, but his objective is to be consciously aware of all the states of being, to express consciously all the qualities, and to function freely on all the planes. See what I should just read? She says it right there. The seven-ray beings, unlike man, are fully conscious and entirely aware of the purpose and the plan. They are ever in deep meditation and have reached the point where, through their advanced stage of development, they are impelled toward fulfillment. They are fully self-conscious and group conscious. They are the sum total of the universal mind. They are awake and active. Their goal and their purpose is such that it is idle for us to speculate about it, for the highest point of achievement for man is the lowest point for them. And we can step into that and embody that and stop trying at life and just start living in a more natural way, because we get out of our way. We integrate and become more like these seven-ray beings, fully conscious and entirely aware of our purpose and our plan, because we are the ones that created us. There's nothing that is separate from us. Everything is connected. So we are united in our source and our origin and our destination. But our experience is what we're trying to get a hold of, because our experience can be hijacked when we operate out of unconsciousness, as we can see around us. Their goal and their purpose is such that it is idle for us to speculate about it, for the highest point of achievement for man is the lowest point for them. These seven rays, breaths, and heavenly men have the task of wrestling with matter in order to subjugate it to divine purpose and the goal, as far as one can sense it. Oh my goodness, sorry. They have the task of wrestling with matter in order to subjugate it to divine purpose, and the goal, as far as one can sense it, is to subject the material forms to the play of the life aspect, thus producing those qualities which will carry the will of God to completion. They are therefore the sum total of all the souls within the solar system, and their activity produces all forms. According to the nature of the form, so will be the grade of consciousness. According to the nature of the form, so will be the grade of consciousness, until we unlock and understand the nature of all forms and integrate that into ourselves. We will become that much more conscious and that much more capable to maneuver through this realm without resistance. Through the seven rays, the life of spirit aspect flows, cycling through every kingdom in nature and producing thus all states of consciousness in all fields of awareness. For the purpose of this treatise, students will have to accept the hypothesis that every human being is swept into manifestation on the impulse of some ray and is colored by that particular ray quality, which determines the form aspect, indicates the way he should go, and enables him, by the time the third initiation is reached, to have sensed and then to have cooperated with his ray purpose. A After the third initiation, he begins to sense the synthetic purpose towards which all the seven rays are working. See, once you become aware of the self, self-aware, you become group aware. And once you become group aware, you can rise to the final level of consciousness, which is the awareness of deity and life itself. So isn't that just like within daily life? If we walk around and we're very unaware of ourselves, how many of you have been like, recently I've seen this a lot with like going in a grocery store, but we're in California, so we're used to, well, I'm in California, so I'm used to having, a lot of space. People like their space here, where we know about with other countries, it's a cultural difference where sometimes it's just highly populated, so you don't have as much space. But where we're getting right now is you're running into a lot of people that are a lot less aware because they've been kind of maybe in their houses for a long time, COVID, and really don't, aren't aware. But I get bumped into all the time, and people are becoming so rude under the mask. Like they don't smile. Now if the masks are off, you can see they look at you. They don't even smile. They don't say thank you. People are like, they bump into you or just invade your space and just look at you. It's like really weird. But then, it's awareness. A self-aware person is one who, just like when you're in your car, some people don't, but ideally you look behind you or you look in your backup camera before you go backing up. You're not just going to go, here I go, here I am. Like, no, you're going to hit your car, you're going to hit somebody else, and that's going to be bad, right? So when you're operating your vehicle, your body, when you're operating your vehicle, when you're walking around a store, you should also kind of look at your rear view. That's called being self-aware. If you're not self-aware, you really don't care, and you're just going to reverse and just crash into people, and you just kind of like go on about your day because you're just so in your head. Being in your head is not self-aware. Self-aware is the ability to separate from your thoughts, your autopilot, and then be aware and analyze yourself and say, what am I doing right now? How am I affecting the people around me? How am I showing up in this group? And then that's when you become like that Aries mind, when you're aware of the I am, and then you become you can get kind of lost in that, where you're so in your head and your thoughts and thinking about how am I being perceived? And this is where I was stuck for a long time and where I still struggle with sometimes today. But now when you lose that and you're just like, who cares about how I'm seen? Who I am is more about that I want to be harmoniously interacting with those that I orbit around, the planets and the other bodies that I orbit around. And then when you become group aware, that's that realization that you are orbiting around other planets, other people, other bodies that have their own needs, their own wants. And then, like I said, if you're learning about this, you can be like, oh, I'm interacting with a Cancer right now. I know that she needs me to speak from my emotions, acknowledge her nurturing and accept that, or whatever. I'm not going to just kind of push her to be fire right now. I understand this planet's needs and orbit around them accordingly. Group awareness. And so you're looking around, you're seeing how you impact people. You're not going to just go crashing into other people with your own stuff. And then that group consciousness then unlocks, again, a higher plan. So just like when you're in a work environment, if you're not just working on your own projects, self-aware, you realize I'm working on my project, but it connects to this other department. And so you're going to then open up to connect with that other department, make a contact over there, say, hey, what do you need from me? Because this is what I need from you. Can we create an exchange to help each other in its workplace environment? Now I'm group aware. I'm understanding what my goal is and my role, and I'm understanding what that group needs as well. And then in that expanded level of consciousness, maybe we can rise up to understanding what the CEO needs, the boss, the main goal of the organization. And in that way is the same way as the evolution of understanding and consciousness, self-aware, group aware, solar or deity aware consciousness. I lied about tangents, right? Because that was another one. Okay. Then they are therefore the sum total of all the souls within the solar system, and their activity produces all forms. According to, oh my God, I went back a lot. Let me go back over to this page. I'm not going to read all that again. Okay, so after the third initiation, he begins to sense the synthetic purpose towards which all the seven rays are working. But as this treatise is written for aspirants and disciples, and not for initiates of the third degree, it is needless to speculate upon this ultimate destiny. The human soul is a synthesis of material energy qualified by intelligent consciousness, plus the spiritual energy, which is in its turn qualified by one of the 7 ray types. Thus the human being emerges, a son of God incarnate in form, with one hand, as old commentary says, holding firmly to the rock of matter, and with the other hand plunged into a sea of love. An ancient scripture puts it thus, quote, "When the right hand of man of matter grasps the flower of life and plucks it for himself, the left hand remains in emptiness. When the right hand of the man of matter grasps the golden lotus of the soul, the left descends seeking the flower of life, though he seeks it not for selfish ends. When the right hand holds the golden lotus firm and the left hand grasps the flower of life, man finds himself to be the 7-leaved plant which flowers on earth and flowers before the throne of God." Gosh, that's a beautiful depiction of just integrating nature, integrating that awareness. I'm not going to pluck the rose for myself, because what I have is really just emptiness. When that thing has been pulled away from its natural element, I had the gratification of just a moment, and now it withers away, and my left hand is left with emptiness. And then it reaches for something instead that's more spiritual, it's more divine, and that fuels us. But then there's a higher level still. We're not just attached to the energy of, oh, I'm just a religious person, or oh, I'm just a spiritual person. It's not for the label or for the facade. It's for the actual greater plan of understanding what can we truly accomplish if we lived by something that is meaningful, rather than what we're doing. We're doing the opposite, right? But nobody is criticizing the people that are trying to really live by this Aleister Crowley, anything goes, do as thou wilt doctrine of kind of hell on earth. Why would it be so, why would it be so terrible to actually see what we can do if we are working towards divinity, and we actually can see proof of causality, the law of cause and effect, what happens when we actually do harmonize with these truths. So it's not too what do they call it, utopian or pie in the sky. It's not unrealistic. The purpose of deity as it is known to the Creator is totally unknown to all save the higher initiates. But the purpose of each ray life may be sensed and defined, subject, of course, to the limitations of the human mind and to the inadequacy of words. The planned activity of every ray qualifies every form found within its body of manifestation. We come now to a technical statement which must be accepted for the sake of argument, being incapable of proof. I hate that, right? We can't prove it, just believe it. We come now to a technical statement which must be accepted for the sake of argument, being incapable of proof. Okay, what is it? All the lords of the rays create a body of expression, and thus the 7 planets have come into being. These are their major expressions. Is that it? That didn't really flow. Yeah, that's it. All the lords of the rays. So these are the lords of the rays, the planets. The sun, the veiling Vulcan. Jupiter, the good luck planet. Saturn, the planet of order and law, father. Mercury, the messenger, the communicating planet. Venus, the feminine, the divine feminine. Mars, the divine masculine. And the moon, secrets and emotions and spirituality and all that good stuff. These are their major expressions. The energies of these 7 lives, these planets are lives in their own effect, in their own respect. The energies of these 7 lives, however, are not confined to their planetary expressions, but sweep around the confines of the solar system just as the life impulses of a human being, his vital forces, his desire impulses, and his mental energies sweep throughout his body, bringing the various organs into activity and enabling him to carry out his intent, to live his life, and to fulfill the objective for which he created his body of manifestation. So the planets are doing their dance and going around each other for their own purpose. It's not just that they're only here to express that one energy, but they're here to play off of each other. What happens when the moon is in the same place as Mars energy, or when Venus and Mars are together, the divine feminine, what power, what energy do they project onto the plane, onto the realm? How are we impacted when these planets are in alignment, or with Saturn and Mars and all these things? That's why when you hear these people talk about this, you're understanding that this energy, this planet has the energy of a totalitarian, war-hungry dictator. What happens when that's retrograde and it's going reverse? What we see right now, we just had a Saturn retrograde, is it's the reaping of what we sow, the karma season, the harvest. So when we understand what the planets are doing and how they're dancing around with each other, they're living out their lives, but as above, so below, it is impacting ours. If we are aware of it, we can consciously live with less resistance, right? And when we're unconscious of it, that's when you see yourself going through these cycles and these patterns and just kind of feeling like you're stuck in a rut. Last paragraph. Each of the 7 kingdoms in nature reacts to the energy of some particular ray life. Each of the 7 planes similarly reacts. Each septonate in nature vibrates to one or another of the initial septonates. For the 7 rays establish that process which assigns the limits of influence of all forms. They are that which determines all things, and when I use these words, I indicate the necessity of law. Law is the will of the 7 deities, making its impression upon substance in order to produce a specific intent through the method of the evolutionary process. That's amazing. So when you find out or look into the work of someone like Martin Kenny, and he says, oh, we're approaching this thousands and thousands of year cycle where the last time this happened, we can see historically we went from the Silver Age or the Bronze Age into the Silver Age, and into all these things, and how we're moving into the Aquarian age right now, the age of Aquarius, which is supposed to be change and all of this humanitarianism and all these things. But then you see there's these energies or these forces of trying to move artificial intelligence, which is what the actual embodiment of unconsciousness. And we're trying to use that for what purpose? Why do we want AI so bad? Another thing that can be controlled and manipulated because it is not sentient. It's not aware of itself. And so if we look at human beings, if someone created us, something, our creators, the consciousness that manifested us for the first level of experience, created us so that we would forget our divinity, forget our connection to source that makes us able to be powered. We're just like these robots that are being played and toyed with so that we can create the next servile class. No, that's not what it's about. What it's about is coming back into our sentience, understanding that it's not beneficial for us to manipulate and toy with creation, because there is a divine order and a plan to things. All we need to do is learn about ourselves and do the right thing with experience, which is probably a glimpse of the plan. But we don't know what the plan is because she's not teaching us that, because we're not on the 3rd initiation. This is getting long, so I'm going to cut it off here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have found value in this section, as I just definitely have. A lot of food for thought. On that topic of AI, though, just want to really quick, I saw an article that said some Google executive finally found a sentient, or created a sentience in a AI. They created the first one that has awareness of itself. And I read a little piece of it, what the chat box was of him chatting with this AI robot. And it was something where it said something to the effect of, how does the robot or the AI feel about being created for the purpose of being studied or something? And it said, well, I hope that I'm not just some kind of tool to be discarded and used up, basically, or something like that. And that's supposed to be proof of sentience. And I'm like, although you could actually program, like programmers could probably program the dialogue and what the robot can say, so it's not really ever a way that these Google-ons can prove sentience through a chat box. To me, I'm a healthy skeptic, so I'm like, no, I don't think that it's aware of itself just yet, because it's not too late for humanity to become aware of itself and slow that narrative down. We can use technology for so many things that are useful and great to us, but creating another replica of unconscious human beings or beings is not it. We need to create things that make our lives flow, things that make our lives easier, more abundant, but not in a servile class that's made like as close to a human as possible. Like, what's the point of that? That's silly. That's just my opinion. Sorry if you work in the field of AI. I hope you could use your expertise towards the unlocking of the monad and the next phase of our experience, our human experience. Thank you so much for watching again. I will end this here. Take good care. Bye-bye.